Hi boys and girls, and welcome to today's English lesson. This week we're going to be continuing our work on diary writing, but we're going to be writing a diary this week as though we are somebody else. Now before we start, can you think back and can you remember what a diary actually is? Have a think. A diary is a recount. It's a retelling of the day's events. In diaries you'll find lots of detail describing what places look like, what happened in certain events, and you'll also find people's emotional reactions, so their feelings within that as well. Now, as I just said, this week we're going to be writing a diary as though we are somebody else. In fact, we're going to be writing a diary as though we are this man here. His name is Samuel Pepys. Now, Samuel Pepys witnessed an incredible event in 1666. This event was called the Great Fire of London, and I know last week you learned a lot about this in your home learning in your history lesson. So today, let's talk about his story, and let's then have a go at writing the first part of his diary as though we are him writing our diary, and then we will continue writing that diary throughout the rest of the week. Can you tell me what happened first in Samuel Pepys's version of the Great Fire of London? If you're not sure, don't worry, let me tell you what happened. So the day is September 2nd, 1666. Samuel Pepys has enjoyed a normal day. He has had his dinner, he might have eaten some stew and some bread, and he might have washed it all down with a glass of red wine. He might have enjoyed some Parmesan cheese, that's his favourite. He's gone up to bed, he's put on his nightgown and his nightcap. Now his bedroom wouldn't have looked like your bedroom. It'll be probably mostly made out of wood, and there'll be no electricity, so he'd need a candle to light his way as well. So he goes to bed as normal, and he's sleeping quite soundly when at 3 a.m. somebody wakes him up. His maid, Jane, shakes him, and she's sounding a bit worried. She says, "Mr. Pepys! Mr. Pepys, wake up, quick, quick, quick!" And she's shaking him. And Mr. Pepys, Sam Pepys, opens his eyes, and he's quite tightly rubs his bleary eyes, and he says, "What's the matter, Jane? What's going on?" And Jane says, "Mr. Pepys, come quick, come quick. There's a fire, come see the fire." Samuel Pepys gets out of bed, probably feeling a little bit grumpy at the moment, and he walks over to the window and has a little look out. Now, far away in the distance, he can see the orange glow of a fire, just starting in London. Now, Samuel Pepys is very used to fires in London. Now, at that time, London was made out of wood, lots of wooden houses, and there was no electricity, so people had to have a lot of open flames. So they used candles rather than using lights, and they cooked things on open fires in the streets, and they had open fireplaces to cook as well. So wooden houses, open fires, it's going to be a lot of fires happening. So Samuel Pepys isn't worried. The fire's really far away. He says to Jane, "Don't be silly, Jane. We have fires in London all the time. Go back to bed." And so he goes back to bed and thinks nothing more of it until he wakes up the next day. So we're going to stop there because that's the first part of our diary we're going to focus on today. Before we start writing our diary, quickly remind yourself of the success criteria of what we need to be including when we write diaries. Today we're going to really focus on two things. We're going to focus on including time conjunctions in our work, and we're also going to focus on using adjectives to describe things. Let's get ready to write. To help us with our writing today, before we start, let's try and think of some adjectives so we're ready. Can you think and write down two adjectives to describe Samuel Pepys' nightgown? Can you think of 2 adjectives to describe Samuel Pepys' house? And can you think of 4 different time conjunctions you can use today in your writing? So here is an example for you to show how you can turn your ideas into your diary. We're going to start at the top here with the date, and we're going to write Dear Diary to start us off. Now you might want to have an introduction, this bit here, to explain what sort of day it's been, but you might not, it's up to you. Now our focus is to use time words and adjectives, so as I read it to you, see if you can spot any in the writing. First, I went to bed as normal after a delicious meal of crusty bread, fruity wine and stinky cheese. Next, I put on my soft nightgown and matching cap and climbed into my large wooden bed. My bedroom was dark and cold, so I snuggled down under my thick warm blanket, completely unaware of the events unfolding outside. Suddenly I was awoken at 3 a.m. by my maid Jane, who was in a terrible state. She was whimpering and wailing about an enormous wildfire that she could see far in the distance. I quickly raced to the window to see what she was complaining about. However, the fire was miles away. I told her to stop worrying and promptly went back to bed. I am feeling quite annoyed with Jane for waking me up, and I'm sure the fire will stop by the time I wake up tomorrow. So, did you spot any time words? I think I used first and next. Suddenly is an adverbial starter, but we can use it as a time word sometimes. I think that's it. I didn't quite use for. Maybe you could do better than me. I did, however, use loads of adjectives. We've got crusty, the crusty bread, stinky cheese, fruity wine. We've also got thick, warm blanket. Now, when we have an adjective and a noun together, we call that a noun phrase. So, warm blanket is a noun phrase. When we've got 2, thick, warm blanket, we call that an expanded noun phrase. So, see if you can use some of those in your writing as well. I'm sure there's loads more you can spot in there as well, but I won't highlight them all for you. So, now it's your go. You might like to keep it very simple and just use a time word like first and a simple sentence. Or you might really challenge yourself and think about how you can use lots of description in your writing as well.